I remember the exact moment my life split into two halves, before and after. And before was the kind of ordinary that you do not appreciate until it is gone. Sunday dinners at my father's house on Maple Creek Road. The smell of his coffee at 6 in the morning drifting under the bedroom door. My sister Diane sitting across from me at the kitchen table with her hair still messy from sleep, talking about nothing in particular. Just talking. Just being sisters. And after was the morning I watched Diane load her car with everything she owned and drive away without looking back once. And that was 7 years ago. 7 years of silence, so complete and so heavy that sometimes I forgot what her voice sounded like. Sometimes I would be washing dishes or folding laundry, and I would try to hear her laugh inside my memory, and it would slip away from me like water through my fingers. And my name is Renata. I am 41 years old. I am the daughter who stayed. And I do not say that with pride exactly. I say it as a fact, the way you state weather or time. I stayed because my father needed someone to stay. Because someone had to drive him to his doctor appointments and sit with him through the long gray afternoons when his memory started getting softer around the edges. Because someone had to be there when the furnace broke in January and the pipes froze in February and the yard needed tending every spring and summer and fall. And Diane left because of an argument. That is the version everyone knows. The argument was about money and about our mother's jewelry and about something Diane said our father did years ago that I never fully understood and that our father always denied. I was not there for the worst of it. By the time I arrived that evening, the damage was already done. Diane was already packed. She was already gone in every way that mattered except physically, and then she was gone in that way too. And for the first 2 years, I thought she would come back. I kept her room the same. I kept her side of the closet in the hallway where she stored some winter coats. I kept telling my father she just needed time. He would nod and look out the window and say nothing, and I could see the hurt sitting on him like a coat that had gotten too heavy to take off. And she did not come back for those 2 years. Or the next 2. Or the 3 after that. And 7 years is a long time to wonder what you did wrong. 7 years is long enough to stop wondering and start accepting. I had accepted it. I had made my peace with being an only child in everything but name. I had reorganized my life around my father and around my own small routines and around the quiet that had settled into the house on Maple Creek Road. And then my father had his stroke. And it happened on a Thursday morning in April. He was in the kitchen making his coffee, and I had stopped by before work to drop off his prescriptions, and I heard the sound of something falling, and I found him on the floor. I rode with him in the ambulance. I sat in the waiting room for 4 hours. I called everyone who needed to be called, except I did not call Diane, because I did not have a number for her anymore. Her phone had been disconnected years ago. I did not have an address. I did not have an email. I had nothing. And my father spent 11 days in the hospital. He came home changed. His right hand shook. His words came slower. The doctor said he needed supervised care and medication management, and no stress. I rearranged my entire schedule. I worked from home 3 days a week. I hired a woman named Gloria to come in the mornings. I set up baby monitors so I could hear him from my car when I had to make quick errands. And it was not easy. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. But I did it because he was my father, and because there was no one else. And then 6 weeks after he came home from the hospital, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. And I almost did not pick up. I was exhausted. It was 9 at night, and I had just gotten my father settled, and I had a stack of his medical paperwork on my kitchen table, and the last thing I wanted was a spam call. But I picked up. And it was Diane. And her voice was exactly the same. That was the strangest thing. 7 years of nothing, and her voice was exactly the same as the day she left. Slightly husky. Slightly flat. Like she was always a little bored even when she was not. And she said she heard about Dad. She said she was sorry. She said she wanted to come and see him. And I did not hang up. I do not know why I did not hang up. Maybe because some old part of me was still that girl at the kitchen table with her sister across from her talking about nothing. Maybe because I am not a cruel person and she was still my blood regardless of what she had done. And I said I would have to ask him. I said I would call her back. And my father cried when I told him. He cried in a way I had not seen him cry in years. He said yes before I even finished the sentence. He said please. He said tell her to come please. And so I called her back, and I said she could come. And she came on a Saturday morning. She pulled into the driveway in a car I did not recognize, and she got out wearing clothes that looked expensive, and she had cut her hair short, and she looked good. She looked well-rested and well-dressed and well taken care of in the way that people look when they have been living without difficulty. And I was standing on the porch. I had not slept well in 6 weeks. I had not bought new clothes in probably 2 years. I had been living on coffee and worry and the kind of love that does not ask for anything back. And she hugged me. I let her. And we did not talk about the 7 years right then. There was too much of it, and my father was waiting inside, and this was about him, not about us. So I let it sit. I let her go inside, and I watched him reach for her with his good hand, and I watched her cry, and I stood in the doorway holding myself very still because I did not know what to feel. And she stayed for 3 days. And she played cards with him. She sat with him in the afternoon sun in the backyard. She read to him from the newspaper the way he always liked. She made his coffee the exact way he took it without asking because she had always remembered small things like that. And I hated myself a little for noticing all of it, for keeping score, for thinking about the 11 days in the hospital that she was not there for, and the 4 hours in the waiting room, and the 6 weeks of mornings and evenings and medications and fear. But I kept it inside. Because he was happy. Because that meant something. And before she left on the 3rd day, she asked if we could talk. Just the 2 of us. We sat in the kitchen and she had coffee and I had tea, and she said she wanted to be part of things again. She said she wanted to help. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking and she understood now that she had hurt everyone and she was ready to make it right. And I told her making it right took time. I told her we could rebuild slowly. I told her the most important thing right now was our father, and she agreed. And she came back 3 more times over the next 2 months. Each visit was a little easier. The ice between us was not gone, but it had started to thin in places. We were not sisters again, not really, but we were something. Something cautious. Something tentative. And then she called me on a Tuesday and said she needed to talk about the house. And I remember going very still when she said that. Something in her voice had shifted back to the Diane from before. The flat Diane. The bored Diane. The Diane who sounded like she was reading from something she had already decided. And she said she had been thinking. She said the house on Maple Creek Road was a significant asset. She said that with Dad's medical needs being what they were, there were decisions that needed to be made about the future of the property. She said she thought we should get some outside guidance. And I asked her what she meant by outside guidance. And she said she had spoken with a lawyer. And I sat down on my kitchen chair because my legs did not feel solid anymore. And she said it so evenly. She said it the way you say you have spoken with a plumber or a contractor. As though it was ordinary. As though it did not mean what it obviously meant. And I asked her to tell me exactly what she had discussed with this lawyer. And she said they had gone over the question of the estate. She said that since our father had not updated his will in many years, there were some ambiguities. She said she simply wanted to make sure everything was clear and fair going forward. And fair. And she used the word fair, and I felt something move through me that I had not felt in years. Not anger exactly. Something older and quieter than anger. Something that lives underneath anger in the place where all the unsaid things go. And I asked her what her definition of fair was. And she paused. Then she said she thought any inheritance should be split equally between the 2 of us. 50-50, regardless of circumstances. And I said slowly that the circumstances she was choosing to disregard included 7 years of absence and 6 weeks of solo caregiving after a stroke, and every appointment and every prescription and every sleepless night and every morning I came before work to check on him. And she said she understood all of that. She said she appreciated it. She said she was not trying to dismiss what I had done. She was just saying that from a legal standpoint, as a biological daughter, she had equal claim. And from a legal standpoint. And I sat with those words for a long moment. I sat with the image of her at that kitchen table 7 years ago screaming at our father. I sat with the image of him looking out the window, every Sunday for 2 years waiting for her car in the driveway. I sat with the 4 hours in the hospital waiting room, and the 11 days, and the 6 weeks, and the rearranged life. And then I said very quietly that I needed to end this call, and that I would think about what she said. And I hung up, and I sat alone in my kitchen for a very long time. And the next morning I called my own lawyer. A woman named Patricia, who had helped me with my mother's estate years ago. I sat in her office with all the paperwork I had kept. Every medical bill. Every prescription receipt. Every document I had signed as my father's designated contact. Every record of the care arrangement with Gloria. Every notation from his doctor's office showing me as the emergency contact since the beginning. And Patricia looked at it all carefully. Then she looked at me and said that documentation like this told a very clear story. She said that while equal inheritance was certainly possible, my father was still alive and still capable of updating his will if he chose to. She said the most important thing right now was to understand what my father actually wanted. And that was the thing that had been sitting in my chest since Tuesday. What did my father want? And I drove to Maple Creek Road that afternoon. My father was in his chair by the window with the afternoon light on his face. Gloria was in the kitchen. The house smelled like it always smelled. Like old wood and coffee, and something I could not name that was just him. And I sat across from him, and I told him that Diane had spoken with a lawyer about the house. And he looked at me for a long time. His good hand rested on the arm of the chair. The window light made his eyes look very clear. And then he said he knew. And I did not expect that. I said, "What do you mean, you know?" And he said Diane had called him 2 days before she called me. He said she had told him she was worried about the future, and she wanted everything to be fair. He said she had asked him if he had thought about updating his will. And I asked him what he said to her. And he said he told her he had thought about it. He said he told her that he had already spoken with his own lawyer 6 months ago, right after the stroke when he was still in the rehabilitation program, and his mind was clear, and he knew what he wanted. And I said, "Dad, what did you do?" And he said he updated everything. He said he had thought about it for a long time, and he had made his decisions, and he had put them in writing with a proper lawyer and 2 witnesses, and everything had been done correctly. And I said, "Did you tell Diane this?" And he said no. He said he wanted to tell me first, and he told me what he had decided.
He was calm about it.
He had clearly turned it over many times before arriving at his answers, and now the answers were settled, and he was at peace with them. And he said the house would go to me. He said this not because Diane was not his daughter, but because a home is more than a property, and a home belongs to the person who tends it. He said I had tended it. He said he saw everything I did even when I thought he was not looking. He said he saw the mornings I came before work and the evenings I stayed late, and every sacrifice I had made, without ever once making him feel like a burden. And he said he had left Diane a portion of his savings. Not nothing. He was not cutting her out. But the house was mine, and he said he needed me to understand that this was not punishment. It was not him choosing me over her in a competition. It was him telling the truth about what he saw and who was there, and what a life of love and care actually looks like. And I did not cry right then. I held it together because he needed me to be steady. I said I understood. I said I respected whatever he decided. And he patted my hand with his good one. He said he was sorry for all of it, for Diane leaving, for everything that had broken, for the years of watching me carry things that should have been shared. He said he was proud of me in a way he had not said out loud enough. And I drove home, and I sat in my car in my driveway for 20 minutes before going inside. And then I cried. I cried the way you cry when you have been holding something for 7 years, and someone finally acknowledges the weight of it. Not because I got the house. Not because Diane did not, but because my father saw me. Because all those invisible mornings and evenings and prescriptions and appointments had been witnessed by someone even when I thought I was alone in them. And Diane called 2 days later. She had heard from my father. She was not screaming. She was very controlled in the way that people are when they are furious, but trying to sound reasonable. She said she was disappointed. She said she felt it was unfair. She said she was going to look into her legal options. And I listened to all of it. And then I said something I had been composing quietly in my mind since Tuesday. And I said, Diane, I love you because you are my sister, and that does not go away. I said, I am glad you came back. I am glad Dad got to have those afternoons with you in the backyard, and the card games, and the newspaper reading. I am glad that happened. I am glad for him that it happened. And I said, but I need you to understand something. I said, love is not only something you feel. Love is something you do. Love is the 6 a.m. drive before work. Love is the waiting room. Love is the prescription pickup and the doctor's notes, and the long evenings when he could not sleep and needed someone to just sit nearby. Love is presence. Love is the unglamorous daily, continuing showing up. And I said you made a choice 7 years ago, and that choice had consequences. Not because anyone punished you, just because choices work that way. Every day you were not here was a day I was here. And those days added up into a life. Into a relationship, into a trust that my father made a legal decision about because it was real and because it mattered to him. And I said, I am not your enemy. I am not gloating. I am not keeping score. I am telling you the truth because you are my sister and because I would rather have a real conversation than a lawsuit. And I said, if you want a relationship going forward, I am open to that. I said our father does not have unlimited time, and I think both of us know that. I said you can be here for whatever time he has left, and that matters. That counts for something even now. And there was a long silence. And then she said she needed time to think. And I said I understand. I said I would be here when she was ready. And we hung up. And I do not know what she decided. That part of the story is still being written. She has not called the lawyer as far as I know. Or maybe she has. Either way, I have Patricia, and I have my father's clearly documented wishes, and I have 7 years of receipts in every sense of the word. But here is what I want to say to anyone who has been the one who stayed. To anyone who has spent years in the quiet, invisible labor of love while someone else was gone. To anyone who sat in waiting rooms alone and rearranged their life and showed up even when no one was watching. And you were not invisible, even when it felt that way. Even when there was no one to witness it and no one to say good job and no one to give you the recognition you deserved. The love you gave was real, and it was recorded somewhere more permanent than paper. It was recorded in your father's eyes when he looked at you in the afternoon light. It was recorded in the relationship between you. It was recorded in the decisions that get made at the end of a life by someone who knew exactly who was there. And staying is not glamorous. Staying does not make good stories the way leaving does. No one makes a video about the person who never left. But staying is its own answer to a question. And sometimes that answer outlasts everything else. And my father is still here. He is still in his chair by the window with the afternoon light on his face. I still come before work some mornings. I still sit with him in the evenings when he cannot sleep. And the house on Maple Creek Road still smells like old wood and coffee and something I cannot name. And I am still here.
And that is enough.
That has always been enough.